Hey y'all, it's Jess. Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. Today I want to do just a really quick video talking to you about what to sow in your garden in September. I've talked a lot about fall gardening in other videos, but I felt like just for the sake of reference, it would be good to kind of have this information in a brief video that you could watch without having to commit to watching an entire long vlog. So let's just take a quick walk around the garden and talk about what you can be putting in the ground. My runner beans are starting to climb and get some blossoms. That's exciting. Check this out. Our friend came back. Look at her web. Obviously, what you're going to plant this month is going to really depend on what region you're in. I know some of our friends up in the north have just a few short weeks until they are looking at frosts. Here in Arkansas, zone 7B, I've got 6 more weeks, and those of you who are even further south than here, you've got a lot more time to actually grow something. However, no matter where you are, you can extend your growing season hugely with just some straw mulch to heavily mulch whatever it is that you plant, and an easy row cover, just some sort of structure. You can get 6 mil clear plastic from your local home store and create some sort of structure to cover whatever it is you plant, and that can extend your growing season massively. Now, things that you can be planting right now that you can probably get something of a harvest off of no matter where you are things like mesclun mixes, salad mixes, anything that you can harvest as baby greens like Swiss chard, which comes in all kinds of beautiful colors, different kales. All of those things are going to come to maturity as baby greens in just a few weeks. They don't mind the cold. They will live even as the frost comes, but at some point their growth just gets a little stunted. So if you put a cover over those, you can be harvesting those even after your first frost. A lettuce that I really enjoy growing is called Marvel of 4 Seasons, but any sort of like romaine type, and there are lettuces that are specifically grown to be cold hardy lettuces, things like Winter Density. So if you have just completely given up on getting any more harvest this year, don't. You can still look at some salad greens. Spinach is also something that is very cold hardy that you can grow. And another thing to keep in mind is if you go ahead and plant things like kale, arugula, mosh, they might reach the point where you can harvest some this year, but keep in mind that with a lot of these greens, if you go ahead and sow them now, these things will go dormant and they will overwinter, which means that in the spring, as soon as the weather begins to warm up and we begin to get more light, those will start producing again. Things like mosh, which I'll throw the spelling up here because I know sometimes you guys have a hard time understanding what I'm saying with this country girl accent, but mosh is actually really a good thing to grow for overwintering because it begins to produce new leaves again at about 36 degrees. So if you plant it now, that means you could be having fresh greens to eat as you're starting to sow some of those early spring things next year. You can go ahead and plant your peas now. Depending on where you are, you may not actually get any peas this fall. I think here in the south you probably could. However, in the northern climates you won't have enough time for those plants to bear peas. But you can eat the pea shoots. They are edible, and if you do provide them a little bit of cover in order to survive the winter, like planting some bush peas and then providing some sort of plastic cover over those, heavily mulching and plastic cover to prevent them being badly damaged by winter winds. In the spring, those plants will be able to spring back to life, and you'll already have that much of a head start on your spring crop of peas. With a lot of the flowers, if you think about the way these flowers work in nature, is they drop their heads at the end of the summer and essentially sow their own seeds, which stay dormant over winter and then begin to grow in the spring. So you can go ahead and get a head start on getting some of these things sown, things like calendula, chamomile, echinacea, all of these wildflower varieties that have so many benefits in your garden. If you go ahead and put those seeds in the ground now, you're looking at those coming up in the spring. The next thing to consider is wonderful roots. Now, I'm actually in the midst of working on a collaboration with Wholesome Roots Farmstead where we're going to be talking about the love of roots vegetables. That will be up on my page and on her page here in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that if you'd like to have a lot of information on growing roots. But today, just let me tell you that roots are good things to sow in the fall, and it's not too late in most places to get those in the ground. For one, you can overwinter them. Two, things like radishes only take a few weeks to come to maturity. And most root vegetables actually take on a better flavor after they've been kissed by a light frost. And that's because the cold weather causes them to concentrate a lot of their sugars into the roots so that the plant can survive the cold, and so you get a much better flavor. So if you want more information about root vegetables, make sure you check back. But for the sake of right now, let me tell you, it's not too late to sow your roots. Depending on your region, you could still put brassicas in the ground, things like broccolis, cauliflowers, and cabbages. However, it's a little late to be starting those from seeds in a lot of areas. But if you will check with your local farm supply store, if you have a Tractor Supply, even big box stores, they will sometimes get plant starts in, and they will sell these cold weather things. I'm actually going to go on the hunt for that today just to see, because I did not get to start many brassicas in my house. I have direct sown some, but I would like to go ahead and see if I can find some starts. That's just a tip. Call around, see if you can get your hands on some, because that's a great thing to go ahead and put in the ground. And it is time to plant your garlic for next spring. September is the month to do that, and in some places you can actually overwinter certain types of onions. I'm planning on putting my onions in the ground as well as my garlic over the next couple of weeks. You can order your garlic cloves for planting online or find them at your local farm store, but now is the time to do that for a spring garlic harvest. Garlic scapes in the spring are something lovely, and you will be glad next year that you went ahead and took the time to do that now. As you can see, I've got a big empty bed here that's largely unmulched. Now I've got plans for this bed. It already has a lot of seeds in it. I'm just waiting for them to come up so that I can mulch around them without damaging the seedlings. Now is the time to really consider what you're going to do to cover your soil for the winter. Don't leave your garden uncovered and naked for the winter. You have a couple of options here. If you are someone that really mulches, go ahead and lay a thick layer of mulch down. It's going to break down over the winter. It's going to provide a covering for your soil. Even if you don't plant anything at all for the fall, going ahead and taking those measures for the garden this year, it's heading off your weed issue for next year. Another thing to consider is green manure, which is planting things like vetch or fava beans. Some people use root vegetables like turnips, and what you're doing is you're going to go ahead and just broadcast seeds across your garden beds. Allow those to grow, and they provide a covering for your soil. They provide organic matter in the soil, and in the spring, whenever you're ready to sow your garden, you just turn those into your garden. They'll break down, add fertilizer to your soil, and they will keep the weeds from getting a good hold before you get your spring garden in. So think about here in September what you're doing for your soil health, because now is the time to really get the ball rolling on that plan. Now that's about it for my suggestions on what to sow for September, but what do you suggest? If you have something you've had success with in the past, or something that you're trying for the first time, please go ahead and throw it down in a comment below. Share your region, share the things that you'd like to try, things that you've heard work, and let's go ahead and just band together as a community and create a resource here for those people who are looking for some information. I don't presume even for a moment that I've got an all-inclusive knowledge about this, so I would love to learn. I would love to hear your suggestions, and I would also love if we as a community could create a resource for people to be able to be encouraged to get out in their garden and grow something lovely. Thank you guys so much for watching. I bless you. Until next time.